Tom Cray. Tom Cray started the VOC, the Veterans Outreach Center in Rochester, New York. And when I first started having my PTSD, as it relates to the military, I went to see Tom Cray and to shed like a light on all this shit that was going on with me. And I asked him if I was crazy, and he said no. And I said, so how does this go anyways? Like, this is weird. And he said, well, you can either take some drugs so it slows it down, or you can just let it happen. And he said that it's interesting what you learn about yourself and others and where you find yourself. But what gets really interesting is when you go back to when you were a child and you start remembering things from almost like the day you were born. And then you start finding out stuff. And he was so like right on that. So I have this, I go on timelines. Like right now I'm stuck between when I was born in the 60s through the end of the 70s. It's almost like my mind keeps going there, coming back, going there, coming back, going there, coming back. It's pretty fucked up. But while it's all happening, you're still full functional, and that's the real fucked up part about it. So I have, like all these memories. It's almost like I'm standing in the exact spot in a room, and everybody that was with me then, in the, however old they were like all there. And it's so fucked up. So this was like 1975, I think. I don't know. There's like stuff I don't know. Like, I don't know what year did my mother and my stepfather get married. I don't know that. I wasn't invited to their wedding. I don't know if it was with the Justice of the Peace. I don't know anything about it. I don't think any of my brothers and sisters were invited to. I don't know. All I know is we had just moved into the house that we were living in, the long-awaited home. And she had just got a station wagon. And I remember people asking her, so how do you like your car? And her response was, I'll let you know after I get used to it. It is kind of big. It's not what I'm accustomed to at all. And on this particular day, she gets a phone call. And she goes to my oldest sister and she says, you're going to stay here and watch the house and the kids until I get back. And my oldest sister never wanted to do anything. And her automatic response was, okay, Mom. And then my mother looked at me and she said, go get your shoes on. And when my mother said, get your shoes on, she didn't mean like in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or even a half hour. She meant like now. And we'd spring out of action, get our shoes on, and go stand by the door waiting for her. And then she comes like marching through the kitchen, like, she has a mission to accomplish, and I'm her roadie or something. Let's go. So we get in the station wagon and we go down the road, and she's like barrel assing it, okay, on the main roads. And I go, Where are we going anyways? And she goes, I'll let you know when we get there. And I'm like, okay. So then she does this like abrupt stop on the side of the road. And she asked me, before we go in there, is there anything you need? And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, I go, are you going to tell me what we're doing? And she said, I got a phone call that your father's up here and he got picked up without a license or any type of ID. And so we have to go identify him. Well, I have to identify him. And I just need somebody else with me. I'm like, oh, okay. Do you have a book or anything like that while I'm waiting that I can read because I didn't grab anything? And she says, no. And then I'm like, well, can I grab a stick or something? And she's like, get your stick. So I get out of the car and got this stick. It was part of my like artistic abilities back then, drawing on the veins of like trees and leaves and shit like that. Occupied my mind. So we turn onto this road and it's like one of those cul-de-sac roads but no houses. Like if you were looking down at it from up in the sky, it would look like a spoon laid down on the ground. And we get in there and there's these guys, they tell us to park to the right. And so we do, and then there's this van with a couple guys standing outside, and then there's a couple cars like right to the center but off to the side. And there's another vehicle over there that I couldn't really see. And so she's like, do you need anything before I get out of this car? And I said, do you have a pen? And so she gets me a pen out of her purse. Then she goes to get out. She's got her keys in her purse. And then she says, she slides back in and she goes, I'm going to leave this stuff in here with you. And if I need it, I'll come back to get it. And I'm like, okay. So she's out, goes towards the group of people that's kind of like in the center, and she's talking with them for a long time. And I can't really see what's going on. I can just see her moving occasionally and her hands moving and stuff. And so I'm fidgeting around with my piece of wood and my pen, occupying my mind so I don't focus on what's going on around me. And I get somebody that comes up to me and he's got a gun. And he tells me to put my weapon down. And I'm like, I don't have a weapon. Whatever you have in your hands, I want you to put it outside this window and drop it. So I put my stick and my pen together, put one hand out the window, and I drop it on the ground. Okay, now get out of the car. And then I get out and they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm waiting for my mother. She's over there. Okay. Well, we need you to stand over here so we can search your car because it looked like you had a weapon from a distance. I'm like, I had a stick and a pen. And so they go through the car and then they're like, you can get back in. I'm like, I'd rather stand out here. I can feel a slight breeze and it's really hot and sticky in there. So they get a wooden crate out of the back of that van and they bring it over so I can sit on it. Then they get this guy out of a van and, he's handcuffed in the front. He's got a wooden box too that he's sitting on. And, he's got his hands between his legs, like with right near the bent knees, that type, like right there. And he's not looking at me or even looking around. He's like looking at the ground. And I'm sitting there going, is that my father? Is that my father? Is that my father? Then I see them bring my mother over, and they bring her up to this guy, and I can't hear what they're saying because it's almost like the minute she got over there, great big heavy breeze comes through, and it's almost like it muffled whatever they were saying. And then they take her back. And then they're talking about something, and I could tell she's like upset about something. And the next thing that happens, I tried not to laugh about it, but it was this woman, she's holding up a notebook and she's going, Mr. Presley, can I have your autograph? Mr. Presley, can I have your autograph? And they're trying to like push her back a little bit. And then she finds a way around them and she comes barrel assing right towards him. Almost like a bull that was released from their cage or something, okay? And so she's almost there, okay? She's almost there. And then she trips on a rock or something and she falls and she gets dust and dirt all over her face. And she starts crying. And so she gets up and she's crying, she's all upset. And then she calms down and she's like, I just wanted an autograph. So they undo the handcuffs and they hold up to him a pen. And he doesn't take it. And then so they do this, like to get his attention, and he still doesn't take it. And he says, I'm under a music contract and I have press agents that manage my time and my calendar, and we're under contract and I can't do anything without their authorization and permission, and this setting right here is not authorized and they would not permit me to do this. I can't just randomly put my signature or my name without them knowing about it on a piece of paper. And so that got her really upset. So they take her back, and then the next thing I know, my mother comes out and she's making her way over through to me, and then she gets close to me and she says, let's go. So I go to, I get up and I go to take the box that I was sitting on and at least move it closer to where it came from. And she says, you can leave that right there. So I get in the car and she does. She get this big station wagon, and she's gonna try to spin it around so that she can get us out of there. So she cuts her wheel real hard and then she lays on it, and the tail end of it goes, slides over, and then she slams it into drive and then takes off and she hits the box and it goes flying. And then we're out of there, almost to the main road, and we have somebody's flashing us with their headlights behind us. And so she has to pull over. And she said, now what the hell is going on? So I asked her in the car if that was Betty, my stepfather's first wife. I'm like, was that Betty? And I can't remember what she said. Or if she said anything. Fucking bugs. Going back and forth makes you tired as well. She said she was holding things to explain it to me so I could understand it better, but when she went to retrieve the things that she was holding for me, they weren't there. And then she got upset because they weren't there. And she didn't know if she lost them in between the moving or if somebody came into our apartment that we lived in and went through her stuff and took it. You know, like invaded her privacy, our privacy, and took it. And so, you know, I never got any clarification on that day. But I don't know, maybe it will come through to me. All I can say is that intrusion of your private, personal property that does not include other people. That's like a huge issue. When we talk about women's rights, I don't think another woman who was not part of the picture during the time frame that it was all happening should have the right to touch somebody else's personal property. It happened to me. The two postal employees, when they got together, while she was still married, she came into my house where me and my kids lived, and she started touching, moving, removing, destroying my personal property. But can you imagine if I went into her house and did the same thing? In payback mode, I'd be arrested. I tried to press charges on her. They said there was nothing they could do because he brought her in there. He invited her into the house. She took things, or they took my things, brought it into the backyard of where we used to live, and invited my kids over and then torched my personal belongings. And the weird thing is, you know, like you start making connections with things. You know, like Valerie, my ex's mother, Valerie. You know, she was like this huge Elvis fan, and she went to Graceland and all this other shit. It's almost like you start putting two and two together. You know, like they're all running bets on your life, and they're all getting paid out along the way. It's pretty fucked up to think about it. All I know is if I could do it over again, I'd do it differently. Because I'd beat somebody's fucking ass, man. After all the shit that I've been through, I would beat their fucking ass from the get-go. Even if I had to sit in jail, and I'd come out and beat another fucking ass down. Yeah, changes a person. If I hadn't been in a car accident, if I hadn't been strung out on fucking painkillers for my back and everything, my neck, my back and everything, and going through physical therapy when Little Miss Twat from the post office came into our world, I would have kicked that bitch's ass, man. I think about that on a regular basis. I would have kicked her fucking ass. No one cares if you take the guy, but when you intrude on some other woman's life, when she has three of her own children that she's caring for, and they just tread all over your life, like totally disrespectful. Women's rights have gone too far. I'm going to keep saying that.